Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here from the Profitability Mindshift podcast. Today we're going to talk about the lease renewal fee. And the lease renewal fee, of course, is after you've placed a tenant into a property, you've charged, for example, a leasing fee at the end of a 6 or 12-month term, whatever term you lock them into. You're now looking at renewing them on a further fixed term agreement. Of course, depending what state you're in, what country you're in, you've got different rules, different legislation around this particular process, but you should be charging a fee. And commonly we get owners of agencies saying, Darren, we get challenged by property owners saying, well, hang on, it's just a bit of paper. How can you justify this? And I remember I used to travel into Perth for a number of years in Western Australia, and they were charging, $50, $60, $70, these piddly little amounts. And I would say, well, how do you justify those fees? And they would say, well, we'd make a few phone calls to the owner, a few phone calls to the tenant, would sign a form, a little bit of time. And I said to them, well, fair enough. If you're going to justify it that way, then yes, you're only going to charge $40, $50, $60, $70, whatever it is, a low fee. But let's scrap that. Let's just throw that justification out the window. And now let's look at another way. If you no longer provided the service of a lease renewal, a fixed term lease renewal, and you allow the tenant to move on to a non-fixed or a periodic, depending on where you are, or a month by month lease, what would now be the alternate cost to the owner? And so this is using the law of alternate cost. We spoke about that in a previous podcast. And what would the alternate cost be? Now, what I like to say to people when you're explaining this to an owner, you need to be going to the worst case situation in your marketplace. If it goes quiet, there's no tenants around, how long can a property be vacant for? Now, you might have seasonal vacancies. So it might be winter time and it's really, really hard to find someone for a property. How long is it? 2 months vacant or something like that? So what could it actually be up to? We need to be truthful, of course, in this, but giving to the owner the alternate cost. So Mr. Owner, look, if we didn't do the lease renewal, we allow the tenant to go onto a non-fixed periodic month by month lease, and the tenant then gives notice and vacates, and it's in a real quiet period, it could be up to 8 weeks before we can secure another tenant. Maybe it could be 3 months. Now, if the rent is, let's say, $400 a week if it's Australia, New Zealand, or let's say it's $1,600 a month if it's the United States. Well, if it's 2 months, then that is $3,200. So it's actually going to cost the owner $3,200 in vacancy. Don't say 8 weeks, say $3,200. The ugly cost in cash. You got to rub salt in the wound, because in the wound they don't want to pay that. That hurts. You got to express the hurt. You got to talk in dollars, not vacancy period, not in weeks. Talk dollars. So $3,200. But also, Mr. Owner, we've got a leasing fee of half a month's rent, for example. Well, that's going to be another $800. So now we're already up to $4,000, plus there'll be a marketing fee. But if we had the tenant locked into a fixed term lease, then they would be up for the full amount. They've got to finance the rent. They've got to finance the leasing fee, the marketing fee, or depending on where it are in Australia, it could be a pro rata or a portion of that. So, Mr. Owner, that's why we charge a lease renewal fee of X, and it could be a quarter of a month's rent or 1 week's rent or half a week's rent or something like that. But now that we've expressed our fee, we've justified it, and we've put it in light of the ugliness of the alternate cost, now we've shown our fee to be a bargain. Alrighty, so that's how we justify the lease renewal fee. Hope you've enjoyed that. This is what the Profitability Mindshift is all about. Take care.